Hello again. Today the class of the scientific writing will be about grammar and style, something which you probably learned in school, some of the items at least, but I will go into some more details and let's do it. First of all, we're talking about adverbs. In German we have a very different way of putting the verbs compared to English, and as a native German speaker this is one of the hard things that we have to change. So this is placing the adverbs. You do not put adverbs between the verb and the object. For example, the next sentence, you will see down here, he played brilliantly. So in German, we would put the adverb in front of the verb. So we would say, he brilliantly played. So if you translate directly from German to English, this would be incorrect. So you do not put the adverb between the verb and the object. As the example is shown here in the sentence, correctly it is stated, he played brilliantly. So adverbs of manner, place and time usually come in the end position. The next rule is if the verb has an object, the adverb comes after the object. So we made a decision quickly, then left. And then there's also the rule if you have various three types of adverbs together. So there's the rule about the order, and the rule of the order is that you state the manner and place and time. So in this example, the sentence is, James played brilliantly in the match on Saturday. So you see the manner, brilliantly, place and time. So place here is in the match and time is on Saturday. So the previous slide you have seen the adverb placement, and now we come to a second grammar issue. And this is about the relative pronouns. So relative pronouns are who, whom or which. And with this slide I'm explaining to you which one you should use under which circumstances. So who and whom. Who should be used to refer to the subject of a sentence. Whom should be used to refer to the object of a verb or preposition. Okay, so subject and object. If you can replace the word with he or she, use who. If you can replace it with him or her, so the object, use whom. Okay? And then the second one is whom, and which. Who is used to refer to people, while which is used to refer to animals and things. And there's an example also here, as you can see. So the sentence reads, I have 12 co-workers, most of whom are French, and I have 12 wine bottles, most of which are empty. So again, who is used to refer to people. So in this example, co-workers, and you use whom, and which is referred to animals or things. So these 12 wine bottles, these are which. Next one, this is about nominalization. This is something that I very often observe with all the students writing. Read the first sentence, and you might remember that you have used it before in your thesis. The sentence says, we performed an analysis on the data, or we made an examination of the patient. And what you can see here is that performed, this has a verb in it, and analysis is based on the verb to analyze. So basically you have two verbs in it. Same here, making or examining. And we try to avoid this, okay? So to change this simply would be to make the verb specific. So instead of saying we performed an analysis on the data, we simply say we analyzed the data. And you see also that by putting this action into the verb and removing the performance, we have less wording, which is great. This is very typical for students to use nominalizations. But we would like to change this. We would like to put the action in the verb. And here you can see again a summary what nominalizations are. So nominalizations are nouns that contain a hidden action. A noun that is formed from a verb like this is called a nominalization. The verb to analyze can be changed into its noun form analysis. And here you see some of the examples of the action, verb, and the nominalization. We had analyze before, analyze, or so to analyze is the verb, and the analysis is the nominalization. But there's other examples, regulation or understanding. The verb is to understand. So this is something that you have to think about actively, how to change into an active form, and thus you also reduce the number of words in your sentence, which is great, because we eliminate wordiness at the same time. Nominalizations can sometimes be useful. So these are some exceptions of the rule that I just told you before. So nominalization is sometimes useful. In this example, it is given below when they summarize the action of the previous sentence. So if you think about this sentence, we analyzed the data, then this analysis demonstrated the need for additional experiments. In this case, this analysis refers to exactly this point. We analyzed, and in this way it is useful. But this is an exception and sometimes useful. Generally, you should avoid these nominalizations. Capitalization. This is also very different in English compared to the German. In German, we have a lot of capitalization, and we have to learn as a kid already when you write in large letters, Großschreibung, Kleinschreibung. In English, the rules are very different, and it actually is way more simple. So I'm going to summarize some of the rules here for the capitalization. At the beginning of a sentence, the start of a sentence, of a heading, etc., you start with large capitals. For proper nouns, including nouns describing groups. So for example, when you say physics and the physics department, then you have here the physics department as a group, whereas here physics, like the science of physics, you would write it in small letters. So you have to differentiate between proper nouns and describing groups. Then you have 4 items identified by their number. So this is something that is also easy when you read the sentence here. In the text you refer to figure, compare in the next figure. But then you also have it refer to figure 2. So you have a number here. So then you have a specific item that is identified and you write it in a capitalized noun. But you should also check what the journal guidelines are, okay? And for specific words, names of the day, Monday, month, adjectives of nationality, German, Algerian, and so on. So this is easy. This is commonly known. Abbreviation numbers. So using abbreviations means that you are introducing a shortened term for the first time, and then you have to explain what this term is. So first write the full expression, then provide the acronym in the parentheses. For example, this one here is given as GNP, so gross national product. You write it in large letters, not in small letters, and provide it in parentheses behind your first explanation. Usually we don't do this in the abstract, like we try to avoid these abbreviations in the abstract. And sometimes it's not necessary to provide these acronyms because it's well known. One example is, for example, DNA. That's typically well known. So this is about abbreviations, acronyms, but then the next one is about writing numbers. This is also a question I often get. So when do you write out the numbers or when do you write them numerically? And here's some of the rules. So in general, write single-digit numbers from 0 to 9 in words, as in 3 hours or 4 hours, and multi-digit numbers, so more than 10 and above, in numerals, as in 24 hours. This rule again has many exceptions, but most of them are reasonably intuitive, and there are some shown here below. So use numerals for numbers from 0 to 9. When using them with abbreviated units, for example, this example, 3 millivolts, or in dates and times, 3rd of October, or in 3 p.m. To identify figures and other items, as I showed you before, when you also write figure in large letters in your text, you write out the figure large letters and you write the number with it. For consistency, when these numbers are mixed with larger numbers, so you use this convention. Punctuation, next difficult item. So there's 3 rules for the non-native speaker that I would like to present here to you. So the first one, insert a comma between the subject of the main clause and whatever comes in front of it, no matter how short. So in the example he says, surprisingly, the temperature did not increase. Then the second example, in series of 3 or more items, separate items with commas. As you can see here, red, white and blue, yesterday, today or tomorrow. These are series. Then the third one, in displayed list, use the same punctuation as you would in normal text, but consider dropping the end. So here's the displayed list, and you can see here the system is fast, flexible, reliable, and you use this convention. More about this topic. So this is about now colon and semicolon. And I would like to also introduce this nice blog to you at crosstalk.com, which I like very much. I found it very helpful. So colon and semicolon. So there are some differences between the British and American writers. Generally, the semicolon links independent clauses. So these are in need for more separation than a comma, but not quite so much as the period would impose. The semicolon also introduces evidence or a reason for the preceding statement. For example, this sentence appropriately uses a semicolon. And I'm going to give you this example here now. So here the example is the race would be postponed. The winds were already dangerously gusty. So these 2 sentences introduce evidence or reason for the preceding sentence. And thus you can use the semicolon here appropriately. Never capitalize the first word after a semicolon unless it would be capitalized, and we have seen the examples before. More about the colon and the semicolon. The colon should be used for stronger, more direct relationship. It should provide emphasis, an example, or an explanation. The colon only consider capitalizing the first word after the colon if it is a proper noun or introduces an independent clause, which is a phrase that you could stand alone as its own example. There's 2 examples now below. So the journal team was excited. Never before had such an important story appeared, and it was published in Cell. So this is an independent clause. And then the second example here is the studies took place in the following animals: mice, cats, fruit flies and alligators. This is a sentence fragment. So you see the differences here between the independent clause and the sentence fragment. Colon and semicolon, some further rules. So the colon should not interrupt an otherwise complete sentence. And I've written down 3 example sentences below here where you see differences in the sentence just based on the colon introduced here or here. And if you read the sentences, you can see there's no difference in the meaning, but you should not interrupt an otherwise complete sentence. So in this case, you interrupt the sentence, and thus this is the wrong version, but these 2 ones are the good ones, okay? In this case, you see here, this is the series that is used. So a good test for this is if you remove the colon and ask whether the sentence would still make sense. If the answer is yes, remove the colon. If removing the colon introduces confusion, keep it. Again, there's more to it. I mentioned to you before the page of the crosstalk. This is provided by the journal Cell. And I really like these little blog entries. It's easy to read. And I told you a little bit about the punctuation, but there's a whole explanation of the punctuation hierarchy, as you can see here, and this is provided here in this link if you want to look at this further. Okay, now we come into more structural issues. These are also summaries from the readings I often get from students. So ensure that unambiguous connection of subjects and objects. So if you reference back using these pronouns or this, these, here and there, sometimes people just don't know what you are referring to. So you have to be very specific using these subjects and nouns. Okay? Otherwise it is not clear what you're talking about. And here's an example also. We assume here that the carbon content of all reducing agents is equal. This is, however, not entirely true. And then the question is, this is, where does it refer to? Does it refer to the assumption, or does this refer to the carbon content? So in this case, the sentence has been corrected, as you can see in red. So the sentence now reads, we assume here that the carbon content of all reducing agents is equal. This assumption, however, might not be entirely true. So then this is clarified. More structural issues. If you have similar ideas, you should voice them using a parallel structure. In this example is given here. At present, wind power supplies 15% of the Danish electricity demand, and about 50% is produced in combined heat and power production. So you can simplify this sentence by just doing this here. At present, wind power supplies 15%, and combined heat and power production supplies 50% of the Danish electricity demand. Again, you see we eliminated some of the words and made the reading easier. More structural issues is the following. So complete compound constructions. So prepositions can only be omitted if they are identical for all components. A preposition must be added in the following example to ensure grammatical correctness. And as you can see in the example here, we have different components. So one is temperature and one is pressure, and you have to be specific. So here you have to read these experiments were carried out in a thermostatic room and at atmospheric pressure. So don't assume that the reader will just enter them by themselves. And this second thing is, when you list, always explain in the same order as you list. So in the example here, in the following, I'll present the reasons A, B, and C. A is the most important factor for understanding climate change, and B, and so on. So keep that order as you list them. Okay, I'm going back to this web page again that I showed you. And here's also some more posts that I liked, for example, overcoming wordiness or how to use respectively. I often see that students just put it at the end of the sentence, but there's an example how to use it. So I suggest that you look at this.